We're a 126-year-old company, and that encompasses the New York and San Francisco Giants. So when we come in and speak with and interact with companies as young and fresh and innovative as you do, we hope some of it will rub off, and as we get later on, I'll talk a little bit about how we think some of it has rubbed off, and the fact that we're 126 years old doesn't mean that we have to be old-fashioned minded or lack the progressive instincts that are required to succeed in business in today's modern world. So we're a baseball team, and a lot of people think that as a baseball team, well, all you really do is kind of throw the balls and bats out on the field and get them to play baseball and get them to win and get good players and all that. Well, it's not quite that simple nor that straightforward in our view. We think that to be successful, we really have to pay homage to the fact that we're in multiple businesses all at once. And our real sort of mission is to satisfy a number of different constituencies. And the businesses we're in are, number one, the baseball business, to be sure. We want to win games. We want the Giants, San Francisco Giants, to go to the World Series every year. But we also have to give recognition to the fact that we're in the content business. You know, we're providing content to fans. We're monetizing that content. And we're competing in an age where there's multiple, competitors within our industry, and then, geometrically expansive number of competitors in the general entertainment industry, that are competing for people's share of mind in the entertainment content space. So in the baseball, the business we're in, we think are really five. We're in the baseball business. We're in the content business. We're in the entertainment and attractions business. We have to get people to come to watch us and care about coming to watch us. And yes, it's competition for the entertainment dollar, but it's really competition for the entertainment hour. How do you get people to invest for a baseball game 3-4 hours? They're coming from Sacramento, or they're coming from Monterey, or they're coming from Santa Clara, Sunnyvale. It's an investment. How do you get to be compelling enough to do that? We're in the customer service business, number 4. So if you don't serve the customer, both through the work you do with your content or the work you do in person at the ballpark, that's an issue, and that's critical to us. And then the 5th business we're in is not necessarily a business, but it's a service. It's the community service business. We wear San Francisco across our chest, and though we're a privately held business, we really, in many ways, are viewed as a quasi-public utility. San Francisco across our chest, many ballparks, not ours, but many ballparks are built with public money. And so how do we give back to the community? How do we allow for the fact that folks want the San Francisco Giants to host their school groups, to provide tickets, to send players out and get them involved in philanthropic causes? So those are really the 5 endeavors where we serve. Tell you a little bit about, I'm going to just talk for a few minutes and then I'd love to take questions, and we'll get to the juicy baseball questions because I think you probably may have those, whether it's Giants past, Giants present, and certainly Giants going forward into the future as the season's about 3 weeks away. I got involved. One of the most frequently asked questions I get is, how did you get into sports? How did you get a job, at the Giants? And I'll give you the honest answer. I was, as a grade school student and as a teenager, totally into baseball, and specifically totally into the Giants. Walked around with, or went to the dinner table with a little transistor radio earphone in my ear, listening to Giants games on the radio, and had a real affection for the team. Played some baseball growing up, but never good enough. The quick realization hit, I'm not going to be a major leaguer. But I enjoyed the game through the media, actually, through listening to games on radio. And in those days, there were only about 20 games out of the 162 games that were on television. So I would listen to the games on the radio, and I actually think radio baseball is the purest medium of them all, of all the ways you can capture baseball, because it's the word pictures, and there's some wonderful storytellers, announcers, Vin Scully. We now have John Miller. I grew up with Russ Hodges and Lon Simmons. And so I grew up in that mode, went to Berkeley as a student, and in a crazy, and I think in many ways people get into sports and baseball or any sport kind of through the back door, through some crazy story. Well, I had my own version of a crazy story, which was in 1978, as I was a junior at Cal. I was involved in the school radio station, kind of living out my passion, broadcasting, and I was broadcasting the Cal baseball, football, basketball games. And it was about 10 days before opening day, and the owner of the A's, a man named Charlie Finley. Anybody remember him? Charlie Finley, very eccentric, a maverick pioneer, successful, won 3 world championships with the Oakland A's. He was lived in Chicago, and he was about 10 days before opening day, did not have a radio station to broadcast his games. Why? Because his team, he had been threatening to move the team. He engendered some bad will in recent years. This was several years after he won World Series. And I called him, picked up the phone and called him out of this college radio station at Cal Berkeley, KALX-FM, 10 watts. He had 10 watts of power. And I said, Mr. Finley, my name is Larry Baer. We'd like to broadcast your games this year. And he said, Mr. Baer, who are you? I said, well, my name's Larry Baer, KALX-FM radio station. He says, well, Mr. Baer, bullshit walks and money talks. How much are you going to pay me? And I said, well, I had to come clean. Our FCC license is held by the Regents of the University of California. So we really can't pay you anything. Maybe we can send you $1 in the mail, but we will air your games as a community service. We're a non-commercial station. Now, the context in this time for Charlie Finley was he was really kind of in the old school. Maybe you've heard of Bill Veeck, who was the owner of the White Sox. He was a promoter. He liked promoting a lot of things, including himself and his own ideas. And in that period, he had come up with the idea of orange baseballs, the designated runner, rabbits popping up and giving the balls to the umpire at home plate, ball girls down the line wearing hot pants, retrieving balls. So he said, let me get this straight. You're a student at Berkeley, and you want to broadcast, your station wants to do the games? I said, yeah, we absolutely want to broadcast the games. Well, who will be the broadcasters? I said, I'm a junior majoring in political science. My partner's a sophomore majoring in English. We'll be your broadcasters. He said, oh, well, yeah, can you room together on road trips? You and your partner and whoever, the engineer or whatever? Yeah, we'll share a room at all the road trips. So he agreed to a 23-game contract for us to broadcast the A's games. And that's how I got involved in what is really a crazy world, professional sports. It's a world that a lot of rules get suspended, sometimes for good and sometimes for not such good purposes. And that was how I got involved. I then went to the Giants ultimately as marketing director and did a stint there for a few years before going on to back to graduate school. And just to tell you a little bit about the Giants story and kind of move it up to present day. In 1993, end of 1992, the Giants had lost 4 ballot measures, 4, to build a ballpark in the Bay Area. And I don't know how many of you were here to remember this, but there was 2 in San Francisco, 1987 and 89, both in the 89 measure where the ballpark ultimately was built, and then 2 others in Santa Clara and in 1990 and San Jose in 1992, all with public money. And the owner, as you would expect, was frustrated, Bob Lurie, and said, we've got to sell the team. And a group in Florida, Tampa, emerged and said, we will buy the team and move them to Florida. And we'll become the Tampa Bay Giants. And what happened then was something that was truly an 11th hour and in some ways a hostile takeover. A group emerged and said, we can't let this happen. When a team loses when a community loses its baseball team, that is in many ways a ravaging experience for a community. I mean, and I felt the same way. I was in New York working at CBS, working for the head of CBS at the time, and I was pained, even though I wasn't in San Francisco, but having grown up here. A lot of other people, business people, were pained, and we cobbled together a group that at the last minute that offered $100 million for the Giants. And the Giants deal in Florida, they were to be sold for $115 million. And we had to go to the league and try to get approval. And the league saw the history of the San Francisco Giants. They don't like team movement. And they said, we'll give this group a chance. And we were, in many ways, we were a who's who of not even just Northern California business, but American business. We had Bill Hewlett from Hewlett-Packard. We had Don Fisher from the Gap founder, Charles Schwab, Arthur Rock of Intel, one of the founding VCs of Intel. And Peter McGowan was the managing partner who was chairman of Safeway, chairman and CEO of Safeway at the time. And it was a terribly exciting period. So this is 1993. And we took over. I remember one of our investors, Walter Shorenstein, said, we got good news and we got bad news. The good news is we just bought the team. The bad news is we just bought the team. What the hell do we do now? Because the team was losing at that time about $15 million a year, $12 to $15 million a year. We were at Candlestick Park, which obviously was the whole reason that the viability of the Giants was in question. So what we did was we did some research. When in doubt, do some research. So we did a survey of our fans, and we found out, what are people thinking about the Giants? Why are they coming? Why are they not coming? And what are their views about management? And this is, as we kicked it off, we found that the fans were numb because they had gone through 4 elections to build a ballpark. And the prevailing view was, I do this as an escape from all the problems in the world. I follow the Giants, I go to games, I watch games, I take my kids to Giants clinics, I do all these things, but I don't want to be burdened with your problems. And by the way, the you here are net worth hundreds of millions of dollars owners, and don't complain to me about the fact you can't get a stadium or you got problems. I'm trying to get my children to daycare. So what we essentially did, the message we got from that was shut up and play ball. That if we're going to come forward with a new ballpark measure, we're going to do it in a way that will be proactive. We're not going to, in the interim, we're not going to come forward until we have it all put together. We're not going to complain about Candlestick. So for about 3 years, we just went to work underground, if you will. We improved Candlestick at the time. And in 1993, we had to put together a team. And we had the general manager had resigned because he was really part of the previous owner's group, a high-quality group, had had success on the field, some success on the field, went to a World Series. But he had resigned, the manager had resigned. So Peter and I had to figure out, okay, what do? We have to get a general manager, and we have to get a manager in 1993. And we hopefully could improve the team quickly. So in late 1992, it was November, and we didn't have a general manager, we didn't have a manager, but we needed to get some players. And there was a gentleman named Barry Bonds, who was the premier free agent at the time in 1992, and this is November of 92. His father was a great Giant. His godfather, Willie Mays, was maybe the greatest Giant of them all. And so we said to ourselves, okay, now is there a better, more perfect fit just sort of as writing the story of Sarah High School, San Carlos, born and raised, superstar comes back to the Giants. But we had never done anything like this before, Peter and I. I mean, we were, I worked in marketing for the Giants, and I worked for CBS as assistant to Larry Tisch, but, hadn't negotiated a player contract, nor had Peter. So we thought it was going to be, difficult. He was the premier free agent. The Yankees were going after him. The Braves were going after him. So we called the agent, and the agent said, who are you? Well, my name's Baer, this is McGowan, we're trying to buy the team, we don't have the team yet. They said, well, call me back when you have the team. Well, it's going to take too long. We need your player, and we want him, and we're confident we will get the team. Well, we pestered him with calls repeatedly to the point where he finally said, okay, I give up, no mas. Here, you call Barry himself, and you make the case to Barry. But you can't reach him between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., 6 days a week. So you got to call before 10 a.m. West Coast time or after 4 p.m. And I said, well, why is that? Can't reach him between. Because he's spending 6 hours a day, 6 days a week working out, running stadium steps, lifting, et cetera. This is 1992. Okay. His father, who at the time was coaching for the Cleveland Indians in his, early 50s, svelte, great shape. So we thought that sort of augured well for signing a player to what would have had to be at the time an enormous contract. So called that number outside of those hours and reached Barry, and we said, we're a group that attempting to take over the Giants. We think we're going to get a deal here within weeks. And we want you to be a Giant in our first year, and we want you to be forever a Giant in the tradition of your father and in the tradition of your godfather, Willie Mays. And Barry's reaction was, first silence on the phone, and then you could hear he was choked up, and he said, if there is a way to come back and wear that uniform, that Giants uniform that I wore, that I was in the clubhouse watching my father wear and watch Willie Mays perform in, as I was 4 years old and through my childhood, there's nothing more important that I'd want to do with my life than to carry out their tradition. So we still had to negotiate a deal. So we met at the airport Hyatt over here in a week or two later, secretly. Everybody thought it was the Yankees or Braves who were going to get Barry Bonds. And we said, and this really gave us a good, interesting idea as to how the thinking goes among players, agents, in the world of sports. We had some ideas what to pay, but when we looked at some comparables, but we weren't entirely sure where this was going to go. And first talked about term, and we offered up 5 years. At the time he was 28, so didn't think that would be a huge risk given his lack of injury history. And we're talking about 7 years. So that would take 7 years would take you to 35, 5 years take you to 33. Probably could work something out there. Dollars. We let them take the lead in that discussion. Ryan Sandberg at the time was the number one, the highest paid player in baseball. Ryan Sandberg was making $7.2 million. And it was an interesting lesson in how minds in sports work. They said, well, Ryan Sandberg is making $7.2 million, and Barry Bonds is the best player in the game today. And that was true. He was, in 1992, the best player in the game. Little did we know what would happen beyond in terms of his, of his achievements. And we ended up saying, we'll pay you a smidge over Ryan Sandberg, $7.3 million a year. And we didn't talk a lot about present value, and so we talked about, well, we'll set it up. And they basically said, done. Why? I mean, there was some back and forth, but why? Because to the ball player, and this was a lesson that 17 years later we still keep in mind, the ball player, what's very important is how you slot with your peers. And in those days, $7.3 million for a superstar was good compensation. 6 years was a big commitment. So it was about $43 million deal. As we were getting started, the other thing we needed is we needed to find a manager. And I think these were really two of the sort of defining things that we had to do 17 years ago that resonated for the next 10 years or so. And one of the things we learned and there's something we always keep in mind is how the manager does from first pitch to last out is important. So that's, running a game, sending the signals, are you bunting, when do you take the pitchers out? Probably more important, what does the manager do from last out to first pitch? So what does that mean, last out to first pitch? Game's over. Team has a tough loss. Team has a great win. Team has to fly across country. How does that manager keep 25 players together as a unit in a way that's going to carry out positively for 162 games? Baseball's a long season. It's a grind. It's a long season, small clubhouse. And we had heard about the Giants, a coach for the Giants at the time named Dusty Baker, who was the hitting coach. And we had heard about how marvelous he was with the players. He never managed. He had one stint as a manager in the Fall League, which is a 3-week league that showcases some players, some young players in October every year. But that's it. No minor league managing experience and certainly no major league managing experience. But everybody said Dusty had the right stuff. No managerial experience. So we took a leap and we met with him and we learned about him and the way he thinks, talked to players, talked to some people said, how can you take a chance with a first-time manager like this? And 1993, we had an amazing experience. Dusty Baker, his first year as manager, was manager of the year. The team won 103 games, and Barry Bonds was MVP. Now, lest we thought we were brilliant, or anybody thought we were brilliant, we got some good fortune and some good dumb luck early on in year number one. And then we've had a circuitous route into where we are now in 2009, which I think is actually poised for another good, strong era of Giants baseball. I want to get, with limited time, I want to get to some of the things we're doing with technology that you may or may not be interested in. But I also wanted to say that just to play out the history, the chronology, we came forward in 1996 with a measure for a ballpark that would be privately financed. So it was different than the other 4 measures that were rejected by voters. And this still had to go to the ballot because in San Francisco, anything that requires a change in zoning has to go to the ballot, and 20,000 signatures from anybody can put something on the ballot. So we decided to go on proactively ourselves. We put it on the ballot. It passed. We still had to figure out a way to pay for it. And in those days, 96 through 99, those were, as you remember, go-go days in Silicon Valley, go-go days in Northern California, and we were able to, through seat licenses and upfront payments of sponsorships and naming rights, put together about $180 million in those revenue streams. We borrowed another $180 million, and we were able to get a $360 million ballpark produced with $18 million a year of debt service. And that $18 million a year of debt service, most observers on the outside thought would severely handicap the franchise. Thankfully, we got out of the blocks in year 2000 with year one of our ballpark, which was really the product that we wanted to deliver was San Francisco Giants baseball in a new ballpark downtown. We had the best record in baseball. And we were able to get off to a good start. And some of the chronology. 2002, we were in the 2001 Barry Bonds at 73 home runs. I'm sure I'll get some questions about Barry Bonds, which I'll be happy to answer. 2002, we went to the World Series and lost in 7 games. 2003, we won 100 games. And as you take it through, it's really been a honeymoon since we've been in the new ballpark. that has gone through till just about now. Maybe you could say early '08. We operated about 95% capacity for our first 8 years, from '00 to '07. We have we have really a record, we believe, with our fans and in the game that is that it is at the top of the industry in terms of not just filling the seats, but providing customer service and providing everything that I mentioned earlier, content. We are now a 1/3 owner of the medium that delivers our games, which is Comcast Sportsnet, through a partnership with Comcast. We have done about 120 non-baseball events per year in the ballpark, everything from soccer matches to skiing, believe it or not, and I can talk about that, to monster car races or monster jams, what it's called. So we see ourselves as really defined as an entertainment company. So it's been great, but where are we now? Where we are now is we're in a rough economy, as we all can appreciate, and we have a team that has not won for 4 years. So we come upon the 2009 season, and we've really changed the template of the San Francisco Giants, and I think in some ways it's a changed template that many teams are looking to move to, which is young team, not necessarily going after the veterans. And we have some veterans, and we've acquired at least one important veteran, but a young team that can function over time because they were all developed in our system in a coordinated way. And that's the model that Tampa Bay franchise been successful with, went to the World Series with last year. And I think that's the model that's going to be the prevailing model in Major League Baseball going forward. So when you see in 3 weeks Pablo Sandoval take his position at third base, when you see Travis Ishikawa take his position at first base, when you see most likely either Manny Burris or Kevin Franzen take the position at second base, when you see Tim Lincecum on the mound as the reigning Cy Young Award winner, with Matt Cain, with Jonathan Sanchez, buffered and bolstered by Randy Johnson and Barry Zito, I think you'll see Brian Wilson as the closer. You'll see what could be a model that will take us, that will be sustainable, that will take us out many years. I wanted to briefly touch on some of the things we do in technology and then open it up for questions. And I want to mention that our CIO, who has been so much a part of all of these initiatives, brilliantly designed initiatives, is here, Bill Schlau. So I want Bill to wave, and you'll have a chance to hopefully talk to him and see him afterwards.
Couldn't get the video clip to work.
That's okay. That's not his main part of his job. Just a few things that Bill has been responsible for that have been just terrific industry-wide pioneering efforts. And one that's near and dear to our heart, because I think it really affected the play positively of the team, is something called video coaching and scouting system. And without going into great detail, what it's done is it's enabled the Giants to analyze the mechanics of our players in game, in real time, so that and the mechanics of the pitcher-catcher relationship and the hitters, so that if you're a pitcher and you're in the 4th inning and you're about to face a hitter for the 2nd time in the order, and your team's up and you're not coming up, you can go into a little alcove adjoining our dugout and watch either the previous sequence of pitches you delivered to him or past snippets of you versus him. Similarly, if you're a hitter and the starting pitcher struck you out last time, you can go and you can find out what the pitch, you can look at what the pitch looked like, look at what your swing looked like, and it's just an incredible enhancement, and it's real time. We have a program called XOS that we just saw in Arizona. We're the first team in Major League Baseball to do this, first team in professional sports to do this. And without going into an elaborate description, essentially the players put on sensors, put on a spacesuit, and they put sensor technology, and they are their movements, pitchers, motion, hitters, swings, are recorded and fed back and analyzed. And as you chart through a season, you take that baseline and you see where you are against the baseline. And really valuable for rehab purposes if a pitcher is injured or a hitter is injured. Also valuable for guys that are in slumps. And you compare yourself to your baseline. You can also compare yourself to baselines of others that you're emulating. Those of you who've been to the ballpark, how many of you have been to AT&T Park? Good, most of you. Perfect. Okay. Might not be here if you weren't fans. The AT&T, the HD scoreboard that we did with AT&T, we introduced in 2007. We have Wi-Fi in the ballpark. As you know, it's one of the largest public hotspots in the world and the first professional sports facility to have Wi-Fi. We have a digital dugout with new applications and a smartphone-friendly interface. One of my favorites was the double play ticket window, which is now standard, but that was the first real serious foray into secondary ticket marketing. So you have a ticket to a game, you're a season ticket holder, you can't go to that game. You can put your ticket back up online through barcode technology, and no tickets change hands. Your ticket's turned off, and the person who sells the ticket through the Giants website, who buys your ticket through the Giants website, can come to the game, and at the game you'll have your ticket burped out on a machine or through will call. And my favorite, and the one that is really that we're debuting here in a few weeks, is dynamic pricing for tickets. And we're the first team to do this, and we're starting with 2,000 seats in the upper deck. And the price of the seat is going to be like the price of your ticket on an airplane. It's going to be adjusted to and calibrated to the market. So let's say, and this is for individual purchases, this is not for season ticket holders. So let's say that the standard price is a $20 ticket. If it's a Sunday against the Dodgers, that $20 ticket, given the demand, may be $42. If it's a Tuesday night against the Pirates, and it's April and it's cold, that $20 ticket may be an $8 ticket. And we've worked with a software firm, and our ticket marketing people, ticket services people have high hopes that this will be much more customer-driven, create a much more customer-driven opportunity for us in the ticketing, and could be adopted, industry-wide in some fashion very, very quickly. So we're very excited about that. So we're using technology in all these ways. Bill has been a huge leader in not just with our team, but in the industry in many of these efforts, and there are others we can talk about. But with that, I just want to conclude by saying, as I said at the beginning, we're in a number of different businesses, and we're excited about the business we're in. We're excited about coming to talk to you. We really appreciate you coming, and in appreciation for you being here and taking some of your valuable, productive time changing the world. We wanted to make you an offer, since most of you have been to the ballpark and you have the proclivity, that if you go to our website, sfgiants.com, you can get a ticket for any game as a Google employee, any game in April, for $5 off. And all you have to do is type in on the ticket page, type in the promo code Google, and it's yours for $5 off. So we have lots of good games. I think the only day this isn't good for is opening day, but that's a work day, and your folks here wouldn't like you to be gone on a 1 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, 1 o'clock. But you can come to opening night at 7:15 the next night when Lincecum's going to receive a Cy Young Award physically, or any other game in April. So thank you very much, and I'd love to answer any questions you might have. Thank you. Oh, and I do want to show some commercials, our commercials. I'll do that maybe after questions, just to kind of leave you with something in your brain about the Giants. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, it really touched my heart when you guys brought Will Clark back to the front office. Can you tell me the story or tell us the story? Sorry.
Absolutely. So much of baseball is tradition, and so much of baseball is not just experiencing the here and now, but experiencing the people that create memories for you. And one of the things we've learned, and the Giants have really feel strongly about that, reinforcing the team's tradition. And we've done that a lot with the great Hall of Famers of the 60s, 50s, and 60s and 70s. Willie Mays, Willie McCovey, Orlando Cepeda, or Juan Marichal. They have statues at the park. We bring them back. But there's a whole era of the 70s and 80s, or really the 80s, 90s, that we had great teams, some lean years, but some great teams and great personalities. Will Clark probably at the top of everybody's list because he defined this resurgent Giant era, which he broke it in 1986. Piece of trivia, his first home run, his first at-bat was a home run against Nolan Ryan. Yeah, Nolan Ryan. That's good. You didn't expect to get tested here when you come to visit. But Nolan Ryan, so Hall of Fame pitcher in his first at-bat. And so and he led the Giants to the World Series in 1989. And though he was a Giant only through 1993, so 8 years, he was just a beloved Giant. And it's interesting when players retire, it's not simple. I mean, Joe Montana retired as a Kansas City Chief. Willie Mays retired as a New York Met. I mean, they all came back to their teams. With Will, he was not signed as a free agent in 1994. He went off to play with some other teams, Baltimore and Texas and St. Louis, but always loved here. And in some ways, maybe in the last 2 decades, the most popular player. So we had a reunion last year of players from the 1987 team that won the division. So, or 2 years ago, I guess that reunion was, and that was from the 87 team. So that was a 20-year reunion, and brought Will back, and we started talking, and it was just obvious that he had worked some for the Diamondbacks, a little bit for the Cardinals. He wanted to be with us. We wanted to, mend fences, whatever fences, from the previous ownership or whatever. And so it was great. And so now his job now is to be Will Clark, which is pretty great thing. So he's in uniform at spring training for about a week and a half. I think he's coming for 4 different home stands where he'll be around for the fans and during the games. He'll be on the field. He'll do a little broadcasting, and hopefully we'll have him just like we have for Willie Mays and Willie McCovey for decades. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks. Yes, sir.
Thanks for this, Larry. So growing up, it seems like you really have that passion for the sport and the Giants and everything. Now, working in the sports industry, do you feel like that's diminished now that it's like your business, or is it something that like that passion still fuels your drive?
That's a really good question, and Bill has, I'm sure, perspectives of this too. I don't really lose the passion. I mean, because when it's a beautiful day and it's 12:55 and the game's starting at 1:05 and people are settling in their seats, I just think about, okay, this is what I used to do with my dad going to games. And it's so pure, and I love it. Or I'm at home watching a game on television, even a road game, let's say I'm not at the game. You dive into it and you kind of forget a lot of the other stuff. And the other stuff I find is fun and interesting. I think probably the toughest time in the 17 years has been during the baseball strike. And we had that in 1994, and where the industry shut down from August, missed the World Series, and didn't restart until May of the following year. But I don't really miss it. I mean, I don't really lose the passion or miss the passion by being in it. Hey, they're agents, and there's the stuff that's the quote unsavory, but it's not that bad. I mean, it's a business. I mean, sometimes you just have to put your business hat on. And one of my favorite things to do is you just walk in the upper deck on a Sunday afternoon and see the mothers and sons and fathers and daughters and friends hanging out, and it's great. And so that, if you get into that sour mode, just take that walk, and it's great. I mean, we're very lucky to be part of that world, I think. Yes?
So I follow the Giants. I followed sports really closely, but I haven't in the past year. But all these things I've been hearing, so I kind of want to have the very balanced question. First of all, the relationship and that he wasn't really touted as his last games in the park, and people thought, was there something going on there because it was a marketing opportunity, as his contract was coming to an end. And then also there was I just kind of read the headlines. He's potentially like blacklisted, so he couldn't come back. Like people weren't trying to, even though he still had ability, he wasn't. So I'm just, he was, I don't know if we were being filmed, but yeah.
No, I'm being filmed. That's okay.
Okay. Yeah, so the relationship with him.
And Barry sees a lot of stuff on the net, so if he emails me, we'll know he was watching. So it's not bad. No, it's a good question. I mean, look, first of all, I just say, and this has no relationship to steroids or any of the controversy or his legal case. When a player is a superstar, or Hall of Fame caliber player, I'd say as many times as not, and maybe more times than not, it doesn't end easily or well. Because there's so much, because that player has meant so much to a franchise or to several franchises, and most of the time the player wants to keep going. And who is that general manager to pull the plug on me? I have 762 home runs, or I won 315 games. And so it's tough that it's you're not 65 years old, you're 44 or 37 or whatever. So in sports, there's this constant tension of a great player hanging it up, and there's a disconnect between when he thinks he's done and when everybody else in the world thinks he's done. So you have that before you even get into the controversy surrounding Barry. In 2007, it was a controversial signing when we brought him back for that final year. He had we signed him in '93, the story I told. So, that was his 15th year as a Giant. We signed him to a one-year contract. There were a lot of people who thought that was the wrong thing to do. We believed he would have a good year in 2007, and he would help the team. And we were able to make it a baseball decision. I can't say there weren't other influences, but it was a baseball decision. And he had a good year in 2007, hit 28 home runs. We absolutely, as we went through the season, we honored him in every way we possibly could as he broke the all-time record, Hank Aaron's record. I mean, we had, at each step along the way, we had these great, athletes from the world, not just baseball. Muhammad Ali, Wayne Gretzky, Joe Montana, Michael Jordan, then ultimately Hank Aaron at number 756, do testimonials for Barry. And we had a number of things. I think that as it became clear to him at the end of the season that we may not go forward with him in 2008, I think he was hurt. And I understand that. I mean, we weren't making the commitment that we were going to go forward with him in 2008, so he could only read it that way. And so there was some disconnect between us and him in that respect. In terms of nobody else signing him in 2008, the Players Association says it's collusion. I truly, well, look, we had to make our own independent decision. We had to get younger and move on. Teams banding together to not sign him, I think is not. It's a somewhat preposterous notion. They make their individual decisions. They blacklist him. I mean, teams are in that decision, though. Honestly, I'm sure some teams are saying, okay, he'll perform this way on the field, but there'll be the other distraction factor, and how does that affect our team? But there was I think it's obvious that there was a coordinated effort to keep him out of baseball. And he has his legal case now still pending. Any other questions? Comments? Yes.
So there's been a large new push, I guess, in Major League Baseball recently for online content for MLB.TV, which I think is fantastic personally for me as a displaced fan. And one of the things to do is to have these blackout restrictions locally. And I was curious what your take is on, well, specifically how much control you guys have and input into things like MLB.TV, because there's such a huge, and again, you mentioned, over 100 years of history, essentially, of content that's available. And, it seems to me that if you're looking to monetize certain areas, for especially something like MLB.TV, for people who live in San Francisco, the only way they can essentially get value out of that is if they don't live in San Francisco, right, in terms of watching games. So it seems to me there's a lot of content that could potentially be made available where you could essentially either work with Major League Baseball or something like that, in the sense of local people could watch maybe on demand or old footage or things that you guys feel is relevant to whatever's going on currently. Like if you're playing the Dodgers, watch old famous Dodger games against the Giants.
It's a great question, and it's really a threshold question now in our industry. Just sort of the background of that, of the question, very informed question, is each team's internet rights have been rolled up into a centralized entity, a central baseball entity called MLB.com, or MLB Advanced Media, Major League Baseball Advanced Media, MLBAM. MLB.TV is one of the initiatives of MLBAM. The issue is, it's really, I think, and it's being on the Google campus is a fascinating place to discuss this. It's really an issue of the transition from old media to new media. Because what you're really saying is, why can't I stream games in market, right? Why can't I stream the Giants games, or why can't I get the content?
It's very valuable to have something like that, but I guess my personal thing is that Major League Baseball made a ton of money off of it. It's growing very rapidly. This year there's a lot of new features, but it seems to me that the partial thing that they're missing out on is, and they're trying to do this, I think, with the new TV station. But you guys, even personally, at games, you show old footage all the time.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that providing that content for a fee, there's a huge interest that people would have for that. And then, maybe it's something where that money would go to baseball directly and as opposed to you guys. But it seems to me that there would be an opportunity where you could say locally for, yes, it's blacked out, but you can have access to some certain portion of media that shifts over time.
Right. I mean, there's no reason to prevent access to that content. I mean, that makes no sense at all. We should provide, if you want to watch, and we do it, but not, we don't really do it on demand through MLB.TV. I don't think we do, Bill. And in other words, the '89 World Series.
This season we offer condensed games, and we'll offer this season's games, but we don't have that full archive. And the archive that Tom's describing is our Saving Giants History dream, because the reality is, behind the scenes, we have a huge warehouse of footage back, not all the way back to 1958, but all the way back to the 80s. And it's just sitting there in tapes. And every team has that across the league. And so all of the leagues, not just baseball, but the NBA, the NFL, and NBA is actually the best. But we've talked at the Giants level about, let's take that footage we have and let's digitize it and let's make it available to our fans. Well, but when we talk to the league about it, really that's a league challenge, because it doesn't make sense for 30 clubs to do that individually, as opposed to the league doing it centrally. So it's part of the league's master plan, but for this year, the new baseball channel was really their primary objective when we're talking about distributing that media out to the fans. So once the baseball channel's facility is developed, they're going to start digitizing that old content. And I think what you're describing, you won't see in 2009, but this is going to take a while to digitize all that content and make it available. You probably see it in like 2011, 2012.
Right.
Do you see any value in, personally as a team, your role within baseball, in the sense of how much can you really do on your own? Where if you said, we don't want to wait that long, we want to go to market now and be the first ones to provide something like this, or is it not really an option?
Big discussion, fight, dispute in baseball is states' rights versus the central good. And we believe that, I think it's important that you don't want to tamp down initiative, entrepreneurial spirit, intrapreneurial activity. And, from the Giants, we probably are more on the side as a larger market team, and we think a more progressive team, that has resources to do some of these things, that we want to be able to do them and, and maybe feed them into the central authority. And then and that did happen with double play ticket window and with secondary ticket marketing in its hand, but I think it'll probably happen with dynamic pricing. Okay, so, but sometimes it prevents you from being as fleet of foot as you'd like. The other side of that, though, is that, what really created this venture, BAM, was, if you go back to the old days of cable television, the New York Yankees were getting $200 million a year, and the Kansas City Royals were at $6 million, and there was great disparity, and baseball was afraid of that disparity. And so they wanted the internet, they didn't want that to exist in internet, team by team, market by market. We'll do maybe one more question. Did you have a question? And then I want to show the commercials, and then people have to go.
Sure, I just had a question about the technology you're talking about, of being able to check out your swing or your at bat during the game. While that's very, I think it would be very helpful, wouldn't it get in the players' minds a little bit too much? And what do the players and coaches think about that? Because I can see, you review tape and everything outside the game, but being able to do it live during the game, I can see it. Instead of just going with your natural swing and just being able to do with it, is it kind of just, if they want to use it, they can use it, or?
It's a great question. It's a great question. In fact, there was a time in our, I hope he won't mind me saying this, we had a losing streak last year. Our general manager, who was, you're in a losing streak and you're not happy. He says, we're shutting down the video because the players think of it. You really get in your own head. So for one person's, hey, I see this flaw in my swing and I'm able to correct it, is the next guy's, he just obsesses on it and it screws him up even further. So I think really the answer is it's player by player, that some players, if you're baseball being the grind and being the mental game that it is, 162 games, if you're a 32-year-old veteran, you probably can maybe interpret and process it a little easier than, say, a 23-year-old rookie who is, sees it and gets spooked by it and then just, kind of gets worse. So I think it's player by player. And so the coaches, the answer to your question is the coaches and manager do it in a controlled, sort of tempered way. It's certainly not mandatory, and it's certainly not something for everyone. And so that's a very, it's a really, and the same thing with the spacesuit stuff. In spring training, everybody's in the sensors and doing the spacesuit and then looking at their biomechanically, looking at their motions. But how much guys will act upon it or not act upon it depends on kind of, if it's like overthinking, like anything else. If you overthink it, you're probably not going to be natural. I mean, there's some players that just believe, as hitters, let's say, see ball, hit ball. Don't worry about the scouting report on the pitcher, and don't worry about that on a 2-0 pitch he's going to throw a fastball, or on a 0-2 pitch he's going to throw a curveball or whatever. Just see ball, hit ball, and let your instincts take over. And in the end, it's still, any sport is still pretty instinctive. So you got to look at that fine line between science, and there's so much science now in our sport, so much science. And with the internet, and that gets to a whole nother topic, which we didn't talk about much today, which is Moneyball, the whole Moneyball idea. I know you guys were saying at lunch that Michael Lewis spoke here. I mean, you can cut data every which way in terms of analyzing what you should do for a team and who you should put on the team and not put on the team. And so that's helpful. But you also, it doesn't allow for, if you're looking at, for instance, a player to draft, it doesn't allow for his statistics, don't allow for his emotional makeup, don't allow for, what's his body going to look like 3 years from now, doesn't allow for injury proclivity, doesn't allow for, what kind of teammate he is. There's a lot of X factors where, you can't just get rid of scouts and just go on get reports and say, okay, we're going to sign this guy because he's on base this amount and on base percentage and all his stats. You can't do it that way. So it's a lot of, you got to take the information and you got to really have good judgment with it. It's an art, still an art, not a science. I thought maybe we'd play our TV commercials, which you'll be seeing. They just started this week, and just kind of get people set for the season. One of the things we try to do with our commercials is humanize the players a little bit. And we have Tim Lincecum, who won the Cy Young, and he's in some of these commercials. Hopefully, one of them is not offensive. It's a little edgy, maybe. Maybe not edgy. For you guys, probably not edgy.
F5 it.
See if it wakes it up. Oh, we lose it?
Just bring up we've got a black screen. But okay.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, it fell asleep. Something fell asleep.
Sorry. Talked too long.
Well, projector wasn't paying attention to talk.
Put people.
Both dugouts, or is that a
Other two, we take ours on the road. So if the other team has it, they have to bring it with them. So it's important that we have a portable version. So, but we don't allow them to. But they can. There's a way to. If you're guys saying, can you call it up? Yeah, there's a spot where they could do it.
You take the plugs out of the dugout?
We'd like to. Yeah, that's right. We'd like to.
Used to be back in the day, you'd feed the videos to both sides, so they could, you have TVs in the home dugout and the visitor dugout, but the home dugout, had every single game available, beautiful, crisp, HD. The visitor dugout kind of had the fuzzy old SD feed of just our game.
Ticket offers open to all your friends and family too. They just hit in Google. So we'll see you guys in April. First, they're sort of branding spots, and then there are more specific buy ticket spots.
So this one's against the Dodgers.
Oh, that ball's crushed.
Pablo Sandoval, third baseman.
Hey, it's my turn to run.
Kevin Francis.
All right, hotshot. We're gonna find out how tough you really are. You had enough meat?
Grab some pine, Vic. Grab some pine.
All right, hotshot. We're gonna find out how tough you really are. How you got? Wilson. Finish this guy out. With pleasure. Enough. You made your point.
Put it on him, Benja!
Come on, Al. You gotta slide.
Then these next are more specific to buying tickets for certain events, certain
April 7th,
games.
almost there.
Actually,
Opening day. You ready?
Oh, yeah. I'm ready.
Yeah, the Giants are ready for opening day. Are you? Tickets to all the games you want to see are available right now, so get them before they're gone.
We're in San Francisco Giants.
Let's play.
Get your tickets now at sfgiants.com or 877-4-SFG-TIX. Tickets to all the games you want to see are available right now, so get them before they're gone. Call 877-4-SFG-TIX or visit sfgiants.com for tickets.
That's a four-seam fastball. That's your cutter? What's that?
That is magic. Or fireworks, AT&T Park.
Hey, come on out to AT&T Park Wednesday, April 8th as we host the Brewers. You can watch Tim Lincecum get his Cy Young Award and stick around for the opening night fireworks show presented by AT&T. Visit sfgiants.com or call 877-4-SFG-TIX.
We're your San Francisco Giants.
Let's play.
Tim Lincecum and Brian Wilson are closer.
Hey, me, it's not baseball without a cap. And lucky for you, Sunday, May 31st, it's Cap Day right here at the ballpark. Come watch us take on the Cardinals. 120,000 fans with a free Giants cap, courtesy of CHW. We're your SF Giants. Let's play. Visit sfgiants.com or call 877-4-SFG-TIX.
We're your San Francisco Giants. Let's play.
So
a lot of what we do is try to humanize the players, and that's, you know, and then we try to establish it in ways that are appealing to people. So, obviously, with the Cy Young Award winner, Lincecum.
Just one final piece of business, I'll let you guys go. Tim Lincecum, last year, we sold as many Lincecum jerseys from opening day through August 1st as we did Barry Bonds jerseys in 2007 when he set the record from opening day through August 1st. So we think we've got somebody, and he's only 24, that we got, you know, knock on wood, but lightning in a bottle, and you know, he, as the face of the franchise, be a very attractive, kind of a rock star feeling around him, and we're going to try to exploit it, but in a way that's manageable and certainly not put pressure on him. So thanks. Look forward to seeing you guys at the ballpark.
Thank you.
Thanks.